Hello once again everyone. Welcome to part 11 of my Wolfhead copyright case. I was going to put a suit and tie on, but I've lost all respect now for our judicial system. What we'll start with is we're going to go through the court case in this episode. As I said to you, a week before I actually went to court, I'd lost Ed Bruegel, who dealt with my case over the past 2 or 3 years. He knew everything about the case, got me through the throw-out case, but Ed pulled out due to the fact I couldn't afford to pay him. I mean, they were mentioning something like 20,000 quid. Now, I hadn't got that money to pay Ed out. I paid a substantial amount in my mind's eye. Getting up to that point, I think it was about 15 or 20,000 if you include the buying my copyright back off the insolvency people, and then this solicitor that I did get a week before the trial. The first time I met that solicitor was on the night before the trial. I had to go to their offices in London and we spoke about a few things. But I've got to sort of explain to him 4 years research in 2 hours, which is impossible, isn't it? Which put me on a great disadvantage. And the opposition knew this. They knew all these things were going to be an advantage to them. They sent, on the same night, I visited this, the barrister who was going to represent me the next day in court. Brown Jacobson sent 2 of their solicitors, the barristers down the offices to inspect my Wolfhead design and the stamp album. Well, they went through the Wolfhead design, they couldn't find fault in that. They checked through the stamp album just to see if it was sort of genuine. They were talking about Sri Lanka and Ceylon and these things, because around about the 50s, obviously the names have changed of a lot of countries now. And they walked out of the solicitor's office that I was meeting on the night before the trial, pretty disgruntled, I would say. Anyway, the next day came the trial. First day of the trial was on a Thursday. Finally found the place, got through the security barriers, which you have to sort of be stripped down with all this electronic stuff, hence I couldn't take my my recording device in the court with me, which I would have done if I could have done. We were more or less only just in time. We couldn't find the actual court, it was such a big place. We had to go inside the courtroom. Lawrence was sitting there and this new barrister of mine. Their barristers came in now. I've got Lawrence, my solicitor, and I've got the barrister, the new barrister, which I just managed to get hold of. They'd got 32 staff, 6 solicitors and 2 barristers. They took most of the court. It's a bit like a wedding when there's nobody from the one side of the family and there's tons from the other side. It was so unbalanced, it was unbelievable. And yeah, they were a dowdy lot. I don't know, they just looked unkempt and unwashed to me. You know these judicial things, they wear these cloaks and these wigs and things. He could have done with a rinse, their barrister, and certainly wanted their clothes washing. Well, I think they all wanted their clothes washing. It started off when I was called up to the bench and I was sworn in, you know, I swear to tell the truth, and etc, etc. And then this barrister, his name was Speck. I can't remember his first name, but it's irrelevant anyway. He was a thin, weedy fella. I can't really explain what he was like, but he had this strange way about him. When he sort of started questioning you, he started off slowly like the lead of an orchestra with a baton and built up to a crescendo. And when he built up to this crescendo, he got this habit of standing on his one leg like a stork. Like that film, Karate Kid. Remember he was standing on that beach thing in the later end of the film? What was it? The praying mantis? That was what he was like that. It was a real weird sort of bloke to me. And he'd build up and he'd build up to a crescendo when he was questioning me, and then he'd end up screaming, actually screaming at me. And he'd rant and rave, and then while he was screaming, he started standing on his one leg. It amused me, believe me. I thought it was really funny. And then, of course, when he'd made a point, he'd look at the judge with his little puppy eyes as though, did I do well then, Judge? I could have swore I saw his tail wagging when he'd made a little point to the judge. But he'd got to make points because he asked me the same questions over and over and over again. Pretty much like when you go on these, watch these films on the television about criminals when they put them in this question room, and you answer the same question, but you always answer them differently. I mean, let's be honest, if you answer the same questions exactly, you're lying, you know, because you've contrived and planned it. But he'd say to the judge, he'd look at the judge and say, he's made one statement 10 minutes ago, he's made another different statement now, but they're all the same. The statements were basically all the same, but they exaggerated all this, and it's their style, it's how they work in the courts. His questioning started asking about the origin of, my opinion of the origin of the warfare. I started explaining and the situation with Dave. Well, I'm not ashamed to say, but as I was explaining Dave's situation, I did break down a bit. I started, well, I didn't cry bawling out quite, but the tears were running down my eyes. I couldn't get my words out. Well, they gave me about 5 minutes to sort of regain my composure, sort of thing. Because it's upsetting when you're talking about your dead family and the way they were treated all their lives. Because Dave was mistreated all his life, even through school. He was ridiculed and laughed at. It was only because he couldn't see. Even the teachers sort of ridiculed and laughed at him. That's how it was in them days. It was just a ridiculous situation. You can read all about this in that book about Divinity and Spirituality of a Seventh Born. I know it just sounds a religious book, but it's nothing to do with religion. It's to do with my family and each individual from that family and the things they got up to. And some of the things they did get up to, believe me, it's unbelievable. But it was worth writing a book about. Well, he started questioning me once I'd sort of gained my composure. The only person that got any compassion for me was the usherette, and she said, "Are you all right, Mr. Davis?" Yeah, I was all right. It was just one of the things that comes over you when you're under stress. I mean, don't forget, I'd had 4 years of preparing for this, and finally I got to the court, and it was all there, and I was confident, I was confident that I was going to win the case. I was going to prove my point and win my case. So, they started with the questioning. They asked me, the main part of questioning was about this Tony Marshall tape. They sort of harboured on it, played some clips from it in the court. There was loads of blips on it which didn't exist on my original one, on the two I sent them. There were blips and misses out on all the tapes they played, and it obviously convinced the judge that somebody had been meddling with the tape, and they made on it was me. I've got the original recording, as you can see, and there would be no point in me messing about with recording. It had got nothing to do with my Warfed copyright. It was just a guy's statement. Now, in his witness statement with them, he said one thing, and then on my recording he said another. Well, they had to discredit me for that, didn't they? That was one of the main points of contention, and that went on for quite a while. He questioned me about, like I say, colours of the Warfed I'd produced for various solicitors, saying, "Oh, that's the wrong colour, how come you changed colours?" And all irrelevant stuff. It was just really ridiculous. And this was going round and round and round in the loop for 8 hours. This went on for the first day. And at the end of the day, I sort of thought, well, what was that all about? What was the point in all that? The next day, they got run up in court as a witness to me doing the design in 1963, and they knew Ron was an obstacle, because Ron, my elder brother, my next elder brother, I've got elder brothers but they were all dead by this court case time. He's quite educated, he educated himself. Unlike, I mean, in the family you've always got one who likes art, one who gets on well, one who does badly and this sort of thing, and Ron was the one who did okay for himself. he became bank manager and the systems analysis at his own company, got some sort of degrees and stuff and everything. And it was a bit of a hurdle for him because, see, they think us from up north, we're all thick. They portray us as, you know, backward. I remember I was doing contact work for a bloke once down in London. He was an Arsenal fan, and he used to insult us regularly, call us all this and all that. And when these Brown Jacobson did the summing, their summing up for the judge, I think it was 120 pages, I read two, and they said about me that he was a man of little intelligence or of minor intelligence. So that's the sort of games they play. Anyway, Ron was on the stand and he was questioned about me doing the design, like little trick questions. Well, how do you remember this? How do you remember that? Ron said, well, I remember that particular day because it was the day I'd graduated for college and I'd come home, so and so and so and so and so. So their points, they tried to make on that. How can you possibly remember points 50 years ago? But you do if there's certain things happen, and you do anyway if you're telling the truth. Anyway, they questioned him on his witness statements, and they pulled a bombshell out in front of the judge. They said to him, well, Mr. Davis, you said that you saw your brother write the letter to Wolverhampton Wanderers, and Ron was gobsmacked. He said, well, I never said that. Well, you've said this in your statement. Really, what Ron should have said was, let me see this statement. But it was sort of, they unseated him, if you know what I mean. They threw a bombshell in there. It shocked Ron because he couldn't figure out why, or you know, you think, well, what did I put there? When you're sitting there in the court, and because some of their questions, they start ranting. They know this. They can pressure you then because they put a bombshell in your statement. And Ron says, well, I never said that on my witness statement. That's not true. Goodness gracious me, Ron's exclamation was. And I could see the judge, and so they threw this element of doubt in the judge's mind against Ron's statement as well. So that's how they work. So they discredited Ron, and they discredited me. I'll just show you Ron's witness statement. And there's nothing about this, him seeing me write the letter, because he didn't see me write the letter. But how that got in there, chucked in there, it was just another red herring by them. Right, I'm going to show you Ron's witness statement. We'll scroll it up. It's not too complicated to look at. It's only 2 pages, but we'll do it slowly. And you can read it yourself, just to show that I'm telling the truth. I'm going to do it nice and slow, section at a time. You can freeze this, read it, or if there's any potential barristers out there or solicitors who are interested in all this, I can send you photocopies. I'll scan it out on this again, but there you go. That's the first page. The second page, so that was Ron up the creek without a paddle, wasn't it? Another discredited, me discredited because the Tony Marshall voicemail, and Ron discredited because there'd been a bombshell put in his witness statement. We never saw his witness statement. When I think about it, we really should have objected to see his witness statement. Now, talking about witness statements, when I was on the stand, they said to me, well, in your witness statement, you said that one of the designs on the Cyril Cole poster was Halifax Dukes, I think it was. Halifax Dukes, which is the elephant. This is the Halifax Dukes Speedway team. As you can see, they've got an elephant on the front of their bibs. And this is one of the 4 drawings from my original Cyril Cole design. in 63. Now what they said in court, this speck, he said, in your statements you said that one of the designs you drew was of Halifax Dukes. And I thought, well, I never put that in my statement. I'm 99.9% sure, because you'd never be so sure when you're under pressure in the court. But I hadn't seen my statements. I'd only seen the statements up to that point. Before I got to court, I suppose I had some statements come through electronically. They never appeared. So I don't know if somebody had been meddling with my statements, and Ron's statement, I couldn't prove it anyway. Anyway, he questioned me about this Halifax Dukes team in front of the judge, and he said, now, Mr. Davis, this Halifax Dukes never started Speedway till 1965, so how could you possibly have drawn a picture of Halifax Dukes on your Cyril Cole poster? And I'm going, well, I can't remember, to be honest with you. It's been a long time. It's such a minor sort of thing to remember. And he sort of blew it up and made a point. Now, I'd been lying about that as well. But when I got home after the trial, I looked up Halifax Dukes, and they, like Wolverhampton, Monmouth Green Speedway, they disbanded in the early 50s, the Halifax Dukes had. As had the Speedway, and Wolverhampton Speedway had come back in 61 or 62. But this Halifax Dukes, they'd come back in 65. So, obviously, 50 years ago, which I couldn't really recall, I'd been looking at this Halifax Dukes because they were in existence and they had been in existence. But he tried to make on that they'd never been in existence till 65. I couldn't do the research in the court, and they knew this. And they put this across to the judge, and the judge thinking, oh, here we go, we've got another sort of discrepancy here in his statement. So all these things went on and went on and went on. And then it was mentioned about the Pascal design. They said, oh, you drew this design from a mathematical design, well, you stated. And in the letter you sent to Mishcom de Raya, the very first solicitors who you tried to get interested seriously in your case. Well, I probably did say it was from a mathematical design, but I didn't say, actually, I've got the witness statement, which I'll show you. I've got that letter later on, which I'll show you when I go through the judge's summing up on my case, because it's easier then to refer to. But it was from a mathematical design, but it wasn't worked out mathematically. And every video the videos you've looked at, and every statement I ever sent, I told me it wasn't based on mathematics. It was based on 6 points of that design. It was just part of the mathematical equation of Blaise Pascal. It's like you say you learn your times table, but how many times tables do you learn? You know, it's just infinity really. So they expanded on that and tried to make on I had designed from a mathematical design, and then they sort of said to me in the court, right, what's the mathematical theorem of Pascal? Well, as I said to you before, when I had the exam to do the punishment to do the story on Blaise Pascal or Turnip Townsend, I just went to the library and got about 6 pages out of a book and just sort of copied them. I hadn't got a clue about the maths of it. It's just that what appealed to me was the 6 points on that circle, the geometric set out the 6 points of the circle, and that's what inspired me to do experimentations with designs such as on the Cyril Cole poster and in the Stamp album. So, you know, it's just ridiculous. Sometimes, I mean, they used to sometimes give you, at school, they'd give you detention punishment, write 6 pages of the Bible out. So in the night time, you've got to write 6 pages of the Bible, and you take them back to school the next morning. They wouldn't even look at them most of the time, they'd just rip them up. But if I copied that 6 pages of the Bible, it didn't make me into a religious freak. I still haven't got a clue what I was writing about. I mean, somebody begat somebody and somebody begat somebody else, and that was about it. I've got no interest, and let's be honest about it, if you've got no interest in nothing, you're not going to study it, are you? The trial on Friday night finished with when I said to the judge, have you seen my original Pascal design on the back of the Pascal poster? No, he said, he handed it to him. And then he authenticated my design. I thought, oh, I've got this in the bag. I've proved now that I did do the design of 63. The judges authenticated it. Their defence, oh, they didn't like it at all. I had to go back to London on the following Monday morning after the weekend. And when I got into the court, I noticed a different atmosphere. This speck bloke, he wasn't so violent. He questioned me about a couple of things, and his manner was totally different. He was like, oh, blimey, you know, what's happened to you? What's happened to this screaming banshee that I had to tolerate for the last 2 days, screaming at me and calling me this and calling me that and calling me other? And I couldn't figure it out what had happened, but I think they'd all got their heads together over the weekend and decided on the end of event of the case. But also on that particular weekend, there'd been a bloke had hung himself. It was on one of these chat shows on the television. I hadn't read it till I got home on the Tuesday night, because I thought, well, that's strange how their attitude had changed. But apparently there was a chat show on the television. You know, when they're trying to discredit people. I can't remember what the names of the blokes are, but they're like barristers. And apparently one of the guys on that weekend went out from that chat show and hung himself. So they might have thought, well, if we keep screaming at this guy, he's going to sort of go out here and he could hang himself, so let's tone it down a bit, which they did. On the Monday morning, Ron refused to come with me on the Monday because he was so disgusted with what had gone on in the courts. He said, I'm not going there anymore, I can't stand listening to this rubbish. So I went back to London on my own. My barrister was there and my solicitor. And my solicitor said to me, she says, you did everything wrong. You should have called the judge my lord, not my lud. I said, well, you know, how can you remember these things? And to be honest with you, I did talk to him as though I was Parker. You know that lady Penelope, was it Thunderbird? I just go, yes, my lord, no, my lord. You know, you just do these things, you can't help it, because it's not your world, is it? Let's be honest about it. Anyway, my barrister stood up and tried to put the case across to the judge, which was his first time he stood up. None of this documentation that I've showed you, in the whole of this, was actually brought up in court. None of it. The barrister never brought any of it up. All I say was they was all sitting there, their 40 staff or so, and they sort of got out of my barrister and said, oh, don't question, oh, he was on the stand, this Ian Jackson, oh, don't question him too much, he's 82, he's frail. But he managed to get from wherever he lives in the Midlands to London on a train, probably had a luxury hotel supplied by them, plied him with drink and all the sort of things. So you'd go there, wouldn't you, for the day out, to be honest with you. And he'd got to go because he was forced to go out of the woodwork. You'd have never heard from him if it hadn't been for this Terry Bond. He'd have never come forward, I guarantee you he wouldn't. Anyhow, my solicitor was rambling on, and he said to the judge, like, the judge says, well, how are you trying to put the case? He says, well, I'm trying to say he saw it unconsciously from Arthur Evans and Bernard Brett. Well, I'm not accepting that, the judge says. And then my barrister put another opinion, and the judge says, well, I can't accept that either. And then I more or less knew then that my case was finished with. I could see the judge's attitude. So my barrister called me out and he said, I think he says, can we, my barrister said to the judge, can we sort of have a break from the meeting, which we did. We went into the foyer and he said, my barrister said, look, we're going to lose this case, I can tell by the mannerisms of the judge. So I went back in, I said, oh, okay then, I said, but if that's the case, I'm not stopping here anymore listening to any of this, I'm going to go home.